Hey everyone. Okay, so by now you've almost certainly heard what's been going on with Blizzard. Uh, there's obviously stuff to talk about here because it is pretty damn serious. Right. Okay. So to basically get you caught up, there is a lawsuit against Activision Blizzard, and also I believe against 10 John Does, which kind of like slots for people who could be sort of named. This suit is being brought by one of the like state departments of California that is related to equal treatment of staff, that sort of thing. And this lawsuit basically, by its page count, a bit more of it is basically about unfair treatment of women in the workplace, right? So this is things like being passed up for promotion. When you've got two equally good candidates, or perhaps even a better candidate, the man getting the promotion, and basically a lot of things like that. But then also sexual harassment. And the sexual harassment stuff is pretty damn rough. Okay, so for one of the things that is in the suit, basically a female employee of Activision Blizzard. Now, I don't believe this one is Blizzard Entertainment. I heard it. I was kind of in the grapevine. I heard it that people think it's Activision. But basically, this woman was being abused. I would say, yeah. Like pictures of her genitals were shown passed around by these men at a party, and she ended up taking her own life on a work trip with her supervisor, male supervisor, who had packed lube in a butt plug. So that, as for Blizzard, um, it does seem that Team 2, the World of Warcraft development team, is a little bit more. Now, it does seem like it is across the company, but it seems like there's a fair bit at Team 2. Some of this goes to leadership. Alex Afrasabi? He's the guy who did the comment about the Goblin cannon blowing up that BlizzCon. That one. Well, damn, if you thought he came off like a bit of a douche, maybe you won't be surprised, but maybe you'll be surprised at how much of a problem he was. So there's basically he's serially hitting on people. I believe both fans and employees, to the degree where this is some crazy stuff. To the degree where his suite was nicknamed the Cosby Suite, after Bill Cosby. And overall here, inappropriate touching, men just randomly deciding to give their colleague a back rub at work. What the fuck? This is so strange. I've anecdotally heard some things, and you might be wondering, right? You might be hearing all of this and wondering, is this real, right? This is allegations, and yes, it is allegations. It does have to go through the legal process and all of that, but sometimes in a situation like this, everyone respects the legal process, and that these things have got to go through that. That is, the very, very big important thing, and that's why personal crusading in this is not a particularly helpful thing to do, but there are times where somebody is known to be a bit of a problem, known to be a bit of a threat, and that has to be, people get warned, right? Before it hits legal, because it's the sort of thing sometimes people should be like, that one, bit shifty, wouldn't go near, just, stuff like that. So, yeah, I guess, like, this meshes with what I've heard in the grapevine. Overall, this stuff going on. I heard about Afrasabi, or I heard about Alex like 2 or 3 months ago, and not in any way that like I knew literally what he did. I'm surprised to the degree. Absolutely. All I basically knew was he quietly left for very suspect sort of Me Too related reasons, and that was that. And that it was the tip of the iceberg, or no, he was a sacrificial lamb. That was it. He was a sacrificial lamb. Now it's the sort of thing. Very much, I only heard a secondary source, and I did believe it to be the truth. But it's like, you sort of can't just go off half cocked about these things. But so that Alex thing, from people that I trust and like little things that I've heard here and there, like, yeah, I do think that is the case. There was a more public thing that happened with Alex in 2016. Basically, he got pissed off at a bunch of women, called them a whole bunch of demeaning names, and even pulled the "Do you know who I am?" And like, there's public tweets of one of the people involved, her sort of response to all of this. And then later it came out via Twitter that there was an all female identifying hands, or women identifying hands, meeting with the WoW team regarding this incident that happened in 2016 and Alex's behavior. Obviously some promises that stuff would get better. Those things were made. There's some assurances. Those things obviously did not come to pass. And the lawsuit by this California State Department, I don't mean like the State Department, like, it's a department of the state government, I think. It does mention J. Allen Brack having numerous verbal meetings with Alex regarding his behavior. Now, it uses quotes like "too friendly." I don't know. Running the Cosby suite doesn't seem like it's just a case of too friendly. Now, the thing is, ultimately, we do know that Alex has left the company. Right? We do know that was quietly, I think, in like mid-2020. And I think obviously was over these allegations, which are now being brought forward in this case. It's more than just him, though, right? It is more than just him. So other parts talk about just generally this sort of frat boy culture, this kind of bro culture. People drinking excessively at work, doing cube crawls where people would basically get utterly sloshed, like drunk as fuck, and just sort of, like a pub crawl, but around the cubicles, and that would regularly involve inappropriate behavior towards female staff. Also, bloody hell, like, not the thing to be doing at work. There's a whole other side of this, which I think is less important given the severity of this side, of just, professional conduct and a culture that is conducive to making a quality product for customers, which I think is a little bit out the window when things like this are happening, but that's a less important thing, I think. So yeah, this culture going on. Well, since this has happened, a lot of people have shared their Blizzard experiences. And a lot of stuff like being gaslit by your boss. People not being respected, people not being treated equally, treated fairly. And it does include from a lot of people who a lot of people respect, right? Know quite well, have moved on from Blizzard and have very successful careers. I will say that I've also, since this happened, I digged around people I know. That does include, it does include not people who would know, right? And essentially confirming, yeah, not surprised that this is happening, right? So this really is going on. And it's weird when you sort of know about, but like, it's just weird when you know this shit's going on, right? Like we all do now. It's, and then there's that weird situation of like, is it better? Is it truly moving in a good direction? I do think it is better now than it was in the past. That said, there are people who I've seen others warn other people about, sort of in private settings, kind of like whisper networks and stuff, who seem to be publicly tweeting their support for the people. And it seems like there's hypocrisy there. That's quite troubling. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know any actual stories. I just know, like, yeah, heard things not good. Um, I don't know if people will come out and do stuff, but it's a bit fucking uncomfortable when you see the sort of, I just mean you see the hypocrisies. I mean, of the thing, right? So there's a bunch of that going on, including on the World of Warcraft team. Um, that's what's came out, and I can talk a little bit actually about why I think this has happened. Because look, I've done what I can over the last like day and a bit to try to understand this situation. To sort of, speak to who I can, try to get the reasonable, the reasonable takes and things like the explainers. And I guess my overall impression here is really, I think it's something you'll find to be quite simple. I don't really necessarily think it's any sort of outward cabal. I think it is basically rockstar mentality that was seeded back in the day, right? Rock stars, sex, drugs, alcohol. I mean, fairly sure I know that's the case from parts of the old days of Blizzard, right? I mean, Alex was there since 2004. And on that, there's certainly people in Alex's cohort that now, there's questions being raised. And I don't mean that in terms of allegations, just there's people thinking like, oh, Alex is from that era. What's going on with his mates? Some of them have left recently. Have they just, what's going on? To that, I'd say I literally have no idea. And, some skepticism's really very good, but sometimes over speculating can be, harmful, right? If you sort of can't say things accurately, then, you're just like a blunderbuss, walking into the room. But I'm fairly sure that it was that rock star mentality, right? A bit of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I think maybe a difference, though, is, I mean, look, it's happening against or among pack of the nerds. And I don't mean nerd in a bad way. That's obviously all of us. But I think you can understand how if you get a bunch of people who maybe would not naturally become, rock stars where everyone expects the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You maybe somebody doesn't have the social skills or some of those things, but then you propel them into this big situation of having power, of having degrees of fame and the money, and I think you can quite obviously see how that would lead to bad outcomes. Now, also, I don't believe it's just the old guard. Now, I do believe there's a fair amount of I mean, look, I pretty much know that there's a big ass problem in Blizzard where tenure is way over respected, and good people don't get listened to. I'd say if you want to know why World of Warcraft is in a bit of a fucky position right now, it is because good people don't get listened to. And it turns out that's almost certainly why a bunch of other very bad things are going on. But I imagine, right, let's just say you're super passionate about WoW. You're working on your community projects to get hired. You're doing whatever. You get into the company. You've got this, you've reached your big goal, right? And you kind of look to those people you looked up to, those role models, right? And let's just say Alex, he was a creative director for World of Warcraft for a long ass time, did a lot of things in WoW. You might look up to that guy. And, you see him hitting all the women, doing all these things. And, just being, a public, I don't know, private, within the company in-joke that it's the Cosby Suite. That's going to set some, it's not like somebody's going to go in and think, oh, Alex does it. I guess I can do it too. It'll be fine. People know that shit's wrong when they're doing it. It's just that, the will I get away with it? When you see the big guys get away with it. So I think what basically happens is a bad. Trying to overall encapsulate it, because I think the original Blizzard culture is, all these people, they come together, they find this really big success, and that success almost certainly amplifies their own character flaws and things like that, where, you know, they don't have the appropriate checks and balances to their personal behavior. They don't have those feedback loops because they're seen as these sort of rock stars. They're perhaps a little bit protected. So they get about all this terrible stuff. And then I think when new people come in, well, that culture is kind of like there from the top in the team. And I know a lot of people, you know, try to enter some of these teams and, you know, really want to make some change. And, you know, there's reasons why they can't. So I think that essentially is how this ended up happening. Now, there are some large questions to be raised. Like, how was this allowed to be a thing for so long? I mean, when you've got employees calling it the Cosby Suite, or, you know, these cube crawls. I mean, they're going to be on the company security cameras, right? So how's it not known? And there's, you know, allegations of basically some of the guys just kind of slacking off at work, playing some video games, assigning their work to women in the company for them to do instead. You know, like, crazy shit. Crazy shit. And you just, it's like, how could they not know? How could they not know way up at the top of the company? That's what confuses me. And, you know, hearing that, say, Jab had to, you know, sit down with Alex and, like, I mean, okay, so at least, like, here in the UK, you know, there's a verbal warning, there's, like, a formal warning, you know, and there's a whole process. But surely if somebody does what Alex does, they're terminated on the spot. And it doesn't matter that they're one of the boys. Surely. And, I mean, you think of some big names. You know, like Jab right now, Morheim before him. How did the leadership not know? I mean, Jab definitely knew. And given the amount of time at the company, almost 100% sure that Morheim knew. So how was this absolutely toxic company culture allowed to happen? And, you know, it's a company culture that's toxic in the way that we're talking about today. It's also one that is not conducive to good results, like, for a business. So that's like a part of the thing here. If you were just trying to, you know, maximize profit and do all of that, the last thing you would do is protect these people who are ruining your company culture and, you know, in many cases, not listening to the people that really should be listened to. There's like a cacophony of bullshit, of bullshit and management failures going on here. Overall, if you're kind of wondering, you know, what do we do about this? Where does it all go from here? So the majority of the people who work in World of Warcraft are, you know, not really, they're not the problem people, right? It is the case where it is the small minority of people. But sometimes you can be surprised how big a small minority is. You know, there's a bit of me that wonders just some tidbits and things that I've heard, you know, are those actually true? You know, I can't go out and just say stuff because A, it's not my story to say, and B, I would be irresponsible, right? You can't just go spouting around stuff from a secondary source that you've heard once or twice, you know? But in this context, you know, it certainly has me wondering, you know, about how widespread that stuff is. I mean, look, I've had it put to me that I've literally had it put to me by, you know, by people that I respect, that there is a bit of a problem here of, and, you know, I don't like putting it like this because, you know, nerds get a lot of shit, right? We all got a lot of shit in school and all of that bullshit. So I don't like just doing it, but, I mean, part of the way it was put to me was nerds plus alcohol can equal a bad result. I think if it's in a context where there's not a lot of accountability, where you've seen the top level people get away with shit, So just oh man, so much on the company policy side that just seems wild to me. Now there are a few things like Jab actually did have. I've got it up here. Jalen Brack had an internal email where basically, right. He said he can't comment on specifics. This is an internal email. It was leaked. Then Jason Schreier put it into Notepad just to help, make it anonymous to protect his source. But Jab's statement says that it goes without saying that it's, discrimination and harassment are unacceptable, that everyone should feel safe working there, that, it takes courage for people to come forward and that, claims will be investigated. But it's like, maybe that actually is the case now. It certainly seems to be stories in the past of HR, protecting the company, not staff. Now, of course, the real way for HR to protect the company is to properly investigate shit and root out the shitheads that are going to sow the rot of the company. But, short-term incentives always seem to win out, don't they? And there's a weird bit of this where, his paragraph just says, stepping back, when I talked with Bobby about taking the job, one of the first things I mentioned was a revered saint of the Brack household, Gloria Steinem. And he goes on to, talk a little bit about her and, that he disdains bro culture and all of that stuff. And, maybe it is the case that, say, Alex, was sort of gotten rid of pretty early by Jab as soon as Jab had the power to do that sort of thing. Maybe it is the case of that. But it does seem like he was allowed to go on and was very well known to be doing what he was doing. When Mike was there, when Jab was there. I mean, Jab was the producer of the Warcraft team. Surely he had more seniority. Point to the past anyway. I mean, you do sort of worry there, and it's like, it's really the time for you to just be bringing up Gloria Steinem, like, oh, hey, I know this famous feminist. Not know, but, know of. And it's like, well, fat lot of use that seems to have done. Yeah, it goes on to say iterating our culture is, they're iterating with their culture as much as they iterate with their games. Well, I certainly hope they iterate faster than they have in World of Warcraft in that regard. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's hard to take an email like that, super big. I don't think a lot of people are particularly thrilled by it. It also is a weird juxtaposition with the Activision Blizzard spokesperson one, which basically ranted about unelected bureaucrats in California driving businesses out of the state, which, maybe there's something to be said for like the level of aggression the state shows towards things or something like that. I don't really know. I've seen one or two legal people sort of insinuate that. But then also, like, this matches up with some things that I've heard, and I've poked people. I've seen the public statements from Blizzard staff, and they pretty much all come down to not surprised to hear any of this. So it seems like it's a very widely known by those in the know sort of thing. I thought I'd caught a small whiff of it. I didn't know it was this. That it was this bad. As for what you can do in this, like, it's the situation where vast majority of people who make this game are not the problem. There is a bit of worry that there are a decent few problem people, and that HR is ineffectual. We need to see what actually happens there. So it's a sort of thing where, sub or unsub, I mean, do whatever you want, really. The real way to solve this problem, and I think this is something you have to take it a level bigger. This is a situation where we are seeing this thing's manifestation within Blizzard Entertainment. This is a thing that's going on everywhere. In games, it certainly is going on everywhere. I mean, we've heard many stories from other studios. Ubisoft's been all over the news lately. Even in our own local scene in Belfast, Northern Ireland, we've got shit. When it comes to gaslighting, unfair treatment, abusive work practices. I have seen this shit happen to people that I know in real time. This is some real shit, and it does happen. The way the way to respond to this, the way to act, really the thing that's important is basically thinking, looking around you, and trying to do your best. And hey, if you're already doing your best, then absolutely great. But it's also a situation like a Blizzard, you're like, well, some people weren't doing their best. Now, there are nuances to this. You know, like if you don't have the power to affect change within your organization, but you're depending on that organization from your income, what the hell do you do? You know, there's all these people who are calling on Blizzard employees to quit, including some people who almost certainly been victims of this. And it's like, imagine, you know, your situation where you're stuck in this. You know, you're depending on it for your income. You've maybe moved to California. You may moved your family. You know, it's not stuff like that. It's more a thing of, you know, a large scale societal making sure that, you know, what's reasonable is what's reasonable, and that's what's done, right? And I think that just means, you know, people being vigilant, people, you know, trying to say, hey, look, you know, do I know somebody who's, I mean, not doing it, but like just an expectation that, you know, if someone's doing some bad shit, that people are going to try to keep people safe and make sure that, you know, that they're okay. And I think the only way that works is when you've got good accountability systems within companies, but then also strong social groups who are, you know, willing to look out for each other, right? You know, you should be in a position where this shit's happening. It shouldn't be a thing that, you know, just because somebody's decently senior in Blizzard, that they can do all of that shit that, you know, that Alex is accused of. And I think, you know, I've poked around a lot, and I've looked at all the Blizzard employee tweets. I've looked at everything, and while obviously no you know, legal decision has been made, and, you know, these people all need to have their day in court and all of that stuff, I mean, it's enough that I'm fairly sure there was stuff going on, and I'm fairly sure a lot of people knew about it. And it's like, I don't know, how does a company let that go on? It honestly, it's quite mind-boggling to me. Quite mind-boggling. If stuff like that was going on, you know, it, in my head, that's like, you know, you investigate it to find out what's actually happening. But like, if you know, dead to rights that somebody's doing that shit, you get rid of him immediately. You get rid of him immediately. Like, absolutely. You know? I don't know how it doesn't happen. Don't know how it doesn't happen. Certainly, you know, just stuff like this is pretty pervasive. We're just seeing it in games, you know, now. And we're seeing, I suppose, a flavor of it that is, you know, the way that it manifests itself within games. And in this case, you know, within a company that had that very strong community thing going on for a long time. And, you know, you can see, obviously, how that was abused by people. I'm not really sure what else there is to say with all of this stuff. I think we need to see what happens in terms of public statements, you know, from the company, maybe some statements from, I don't know, from the team or something. Yeah, you know, we don't know everything right now, I suppose, right? So we do need to wait and see what's going on. And I think the main takeaway is, you know, don't go out harass Blizzard employees or anything like that, or, you know, don't act with such a lack of precision that it will, you know, inadvertently hit down the good people of Blizzard and, you know, perhaps even the victims who are still at Blizzard. The best thing to do as a community is to basically be like, hey, we demand good standards. We demand something is done. And I think this is the thing that those people who end up being victims in situations like this, the thing that they would want. I think what they would want from, I guess, men generally is, you know, being aware that stuff goes on. being aware that you might not see everything that's going on. People can do bad things, even if they seem nice to you. I remember I watched Mike's preach his reaction to it, and yeah, Mike's thing was like, well, yeah, I'm a married man. They're a bunch of straight dudes, or whatever. Like they're gonna be like that to me, right? It's the sort of thing where Mike would never find out about that, because these people, they'd be acting one way to somebody like Mike at a BlizzCon. And then, you throw them in front of the ladies. There's a bunch of alcohol going on. They're going to act differently. And, the guys that hang out with them in contexts where those things aren't brought up at all, in a way, could be none the wiser, because some people can be pretty damn good at masking it. So I liked how Mike put it, actually. I thought that was a helpful way to, to put it. And, him and Emma talked about just working in sales and, the situations. It's like, I think one of Emma's anecdotes was like, yeah, as soon as like she was pregnant, therefore obvious that the person she's trying to close the sale with can't get in her pants, that's when she was onto the phone calls. And it's just that sort of thing where, like, yeah, this it does crop up everywhere. I mean, certainly if you've mothers, sisters, girlfriends, stuff, you can ask around, and we all know that this stuff happens way too much. Yeah, look, that's mostly what I've got to say. This whole thing is just incredibly, it's just weird. I actually opened my phone up and went onto Twitter as if I was expecting some new bit of information that I was going to talk about, or some new thing. No, maybe that just shows what the last few days have been like. Yeah, look, don't hold companies up as heroes. Don't make your parts of your identity about an intellectual property. These games, you can take them or leave them. They're like not just, I don't mean to like demean the art that is done, but they are a thing you can take or leave. And that's, you can really love something, but I think when you start to idolize and immortalize or whatever, I mean, like, if you basically lick the ground that these people walk on, right, and maybe have done since 2004, 2003, 2002, it's gonna. It's not your fault. It's the fault of the people taking the actions. But I mean, you're certain, that sort of behavior certainly sets stuff up for bad things to happen. It's like why rock stars and groupies. That's something people talk about. Yeah, look, just the best that any one of us can do is just to be vigilant in our own community. And there are times where it is top-down change that is needed. But if you're in a position where you can't do top-down change, you can try bottom-up change, right? And that just means looking out for the people who are around you and trying to do your best, trying to be a little bit more clued into these things. That's pretty much the best that I think an individual can do. And of course, when the bad things do happen, being there to support people and trying to take steps to make sure that bad things don't happen again. So, yeah, I mean, a few examples of that in our local industry. Not exactly the thing to get into in today's video, but I mean, yeah, it's even the thing there's just people have eyes on and be a little bit about, and that sucks. It sucks, but you got to do it. You got to do it. You can't just look the other way because it's emotionally easy and because that's what's good for the money. You can't do that. Okay, right. Look, I'm still gonna go on stream with Matt this evening. Our sort of show that we do. We'll probably talk a little bit more about this. There is actually the one thing to close. Matt did tweet. He tweeted that the wolf in sheep's clothing. That's something we've been talking about as humans, right? A parable or whatever, for a very long time, and for good reason, good reason. And well, I hope there's not a few of them milling about those teams now that are, doing their big public tweets about how they support everything. I hope it ain't like that, but anyway. All right, see you later.